E aí, amigos do meu canal, vamos ver aí o Joe Biden decide hoje se continuará candidato dos Estados Unidos nessas eleições ou se passará o cargo. Vou deixar a cargo de vocês aí para poder escutar o que ele está falando agora no momento.
Standing together, they knew we'd all be safer. Attack on one would be treated as an attack on all. And it's worked, because a would-be aggressor knows they attack one of us, they'll be attacked by all of us. Sending that message is the best way to deter aggression and prevent wars in the first place. For those who thought NATO's time had passed, they got a rude awakening when Putin invaded Ukraine. Some of the oldest and deepest fears in Europe roared back to life, because once again, a murderous madman was on the march. This time, no one cowered in appeasement, especially the United States. We collected intelligence that Russia was planning to invade Ukraine months before the invasion. I directed the intelligence community to be a significant amount of intelligence to be declassified so I could start building an international coalition to oppose the invasion. Then in February, some of you remember, I warned the world that the invasion was imminent. I rallied a coalition of 50 nations from Europe to Asia to help Ukraine defend itself. Many foreign policy experts thought, as Putin amassed Russian forces just 100 miles north of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, but Putin thought it was the mother home of Russia. The capital would fall in less than a week. But the Ukrainian people, backed by a coalition to help build, stopped them. Today, Kyiv still stands, and NATO stands stronger than it has ever been. During the week of this summit, several heads of states made it a point in their statements to thank the United States and to thank me personally for all that NATO has achieved. NATO is not only stronger, NATO is bigger, because we led the charge to bring in Finland and Sweden into the alliance. And it makes a gigantic difference. Excuse me. Meanwhile, my predecessor has made it clear he has no commitment to NATO.
Recebe-se presidente bem cansado, palavras firmes até o momento desse pronunciamento a toda a nação, né, ou a todo o mundo, né, esse pronunciamento aí do Joe Biden, né, se continuará ou não a candidatura dos Estados Unidos nessa eleição que irá disputar com Donald Trump. Escuta aí mais um pouco para vocês.
And I believe the obligation of Article 5 is sacred. And I remind all Americans, Article 5 is invoked only once in NATO's long history, and that was to defend America after 9/11. I made it clear that I will not bow down to Putin.
Tudo pela América, hein?
I will not walk away from Ukraine. I will keep NATO strong. That's exactly what we did, and exactly what we'll continue to do. Now, the future of American policy is up to the American people. This is much more than a political question. It's more than that. It's a national security issue. Don't reduce this to the usual testament that people talk about, issues of being a political campaign. It's far too important. It's about the world we live in for decades to come. Every American must ask herself or himself, is the world safer with NATO?
Segundo palavra deles aí, né, para quem sabe aí traduzir, né, tudo pela América, né, tudo pelo povo americano, né. Essas palavras dele, the people.
And I believe the American people understand that America is stronger because of our alliances. I believe the American consensus from Truman to Reagan to me still holds today. America cannot retreat from the world. We must lead the world. We're our indispensable nation, as Madeleine Albright wrote. Now let me turn to three other key issues. Just this morning, we had a great economic report showing inflation is down.
Abertura aí para vocês do meu canal, né? pensamento aí do presidente Joe Biden. Se existe ou não da candidatura à presidência dos Estados Unidos.
Grocery prices have fallen since the start of the year. We're going to keep working to take down corporate greed to bring those prices down further. Meanwhile, Trump's calling for a 10% tariff on everything Americans buy, including food from overseas, vegetables, and other necessities. And economists tell us that would cost the average American working family another $2,500 a year. It's a tax of $2,500 a year. Second, our efforts to secure the border, southern border, is working. After Trump killed the bipartisan effort to secure the border, Republicans and Democrats had worked on, because he thought it would benefit me and make him a loser, Republicans walked away. So I took executive action last month. As a consequence, working with Mexico, border encounters have gone down over 50%. The current level is lower today than when Trump left office. Third, for months, the United States has been working to secure a ceasefire in Gaza, to bring the hostages home, to create a path for peace and stability in the Middle East. 6 weeks ago, I laid out a detailed plan in writing. It was endorsed by the UN Security Council, the G7. That framework is now agreed on by both Israel and Hamas. So I sent my team to the region to hammer out the details. These are difficult, complex issues. There's still gaps to close. We're making progress. The trend is positive. And I'm determined to get this deal done and bring an end to this war, which should end now. Let me conclude where I began. We're the United States of America. We are the indispensable nation. Our leadership matters. Our partnerships matter. This moment matters. We must rise to meet it. With that, I'll take your questions. I've been given a list of people to call on here. Reuters, Jeff Mason.
Mr. President, your political future has hung over the NATO summit a little bit this week. Speaker Pelosi made a point of suggesting that your decision on whether to stay in the race was still open. George Clooney and a handful of lawmakers have called on you to step aside. Reuters is reporting tonight that UAW leadership is concerned about your ability to win.
UAW just endorsed me, but go ahead.
Thank you. My question for you is, how are you incorporating these developments into your decision to stay? And separately, what concerns do you have about Vice President Harris's ability to beat Donald Trump if she were at the top of the ticket?
Look, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, so I think she was not qualified to be president. So let's start there. Number one, the fact is that the consideration is that I think I'm the most qualified person to run for president. I beat him once, and I will beat him again. Secondly, the idea, I served in the Senate a long time. The idea that senators and congressmen running for office worry about the ticket is not unusual. And I might add, there are at least 5 presidents running or incumbent presidents who had lower numbers than I have now, later in the campaign. So there's a long way to go in this campaign. And so I'm just going to keep moving. And because, look, I got more work to do. We got more work to finish. There's so much, we made so much progress. Think about it. Think about where we are economically relative to the rest of the world. Name me a world leader who wouldn't want to trade places with our economy. We've created over 800,000 manufacturing jobs, 1.5 million, so things are moving. We got more to go. Working class people still need help. Corporate greed is still at large. The prices, the corporate profits have doubled since the pandemic. They're coming down, and so I'm optimistic about where things are going. Danny Kemp, AFP.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to ask you about your, you mixed up Presidents Zelensky and Putin earlier today. And you now have sort of your key allies,
Primeiro riso arrancado aí do Joe Biden, com a
the
pergunta
German
aí.
Chancellor having to step in and make excuses for you on that. Officials here are saying off the record that your decline has become noticeable. Hasn't this now, frankly, become damaging for America's standing in the world? Thank you.
Did you see any damage to our standing by leading this conference? Have you seen a more successful conference? What do you think? And the Putin piece, I was talking about Putin, and I said, and now, at the very end, I said, here, I mean Putin. I said, no, I'm sorry, Zelensky. And then I added 5 other names. Look, guys, the idea anybody suggests that we haven't had an incredibly successful conference. How many times did you hear in that conference, I don't know if it sounds too self-serving, but other leaders, heads of state, in thanking me, saying the reason we're together is because of Biden, because Biden did the following. Look, folks, this is well, anyway, I thought it was the most successful conference I've attended in a long time, and find me a world leader who didn't think it was. Next one, Nancy Cordes, CBS.
Se acompanhar,
Mr. President. You
pode
mentioned
compartilhar,
other
né,
instances in history where
o
presidents have
pensamento
faced
aí
a
do
challenge.
presidente Joe
What makes
Biden, né,
this moment in
respondendo
history
alguns
so unique is that it
reportes
is
ali
not your enemies who are
em
calling
Washington,
on
né,
you
se
to
desistirá
reconsider your
ou
decision
não
to stay in the race.
da
It's your
candidatura,
friends, supporters, people who think you've done a great job
já que os
over the
democratas,
past
né,
4 years.
pedem que ele
Have you spent
desista,
time
né,
thinking about
disputar a
what it would
eleição
mean for your
com Donald
legacy,
Trump, mas
which you've
até o
worked
momento,
decades to build,
pelo que eu
if
entendi,
you
ele não
stay
irá
in the
existir,
race,
né, arrancou até sorrisos
despite the concerns that voters say they have,
do que
and you lose to
fez a
someone who
pergunta,
you
né?
yourself have argued is unfit to
Pode
return to your
compartilhar, né?
office.
Inscreva-se no canal. Vamos ver a resposta dele agora.
I'm not in this for my legacy. I'm in this to complete the job I started. As you recall, understandably, many of you and many economists thought my initial initiatives that I put forward, can't do that, it's going to cause inflation, things are going to skyrocket, the debt's going to go up. What are you hearing now from mainstream economists? 16 economic Nobel laureates said I've done a hell of a job. That under my plan,
bem
so
sereno,
far,
né,
what's
até o
going to happen
momento.
in the future, if I
Alguns pigarros, né?
things are going to get much better.
Pouco de tosse, mas
Our
bem
economy is
sereno
growing. I
com,
was determined when I got elected
em responder
Stop
e também
trickle-down
no início do
economics,
pronunciamento dele.
that if the wealthy did very well, everybody else would do well. My dad was a well-read, decent guy. I don't remember much trickling down on his kitchen table. Middle-class people and working-class people need help. And so what happened is I decided to implement, was able to implement as president, what I believed when I was a senator. And that is that the way to build this economy is from the middle out and the bottom up. That way we grow the economy. And the wealthy still do very well. They do fine. And guess what? Find me an economist, a mainstream economist who said we haven't done well.
Olha, da família
What have we
americana
not done?
criada,
It
né?
isn't working right now. And so we got more to do though. We got to finish the job. And by the way, I come from the corporate state of the world. Delaware has more corporations registered in Delaware than every other state in the nation combined. I'm not anti-corporate, but corporate profits have doubled since the pandemic. Doubled. It's time things get back in order a little bit. It's time, for example, if I'm reelected, we're going to make sure that rents are kept at 5% increase in corporate rents for apartments and the like homes are limited to 5%. We're going to make a lot of changes that I've been talking about because we're going to continue to grow this economy. And by the way, I know, remember how I got so roundly criticized for being so pro-union, not labor, union. Well, guess what? I've been the most pro-union labor president in history. Not a joke. And guess what? We had the Treasury Department do a study. When unions do better, everybody does better. Everybody does better. And we talk about how, for example, when I went, remember when we talked about getting the computer chip industry back in the United States? Used to be 40% of the industry. We invented the chip. 40% of the industry is in the United States. And former presidents decided that the best way to do it is find the cheapest labor in the world, send the product over there and import what the product was. And so what did I do? I was told not to go over to Europe, to Asia, including Europe, but Asia. And I remember going to South Korea, convincing them to invest $20 billion in the United States to build computer chip factories. And I asked why when they finally decided to do it. And the answer was because you have the safest economy in the world and you have the best workers in the world. So the whole idea here is we've invested, there's over $50 billion in investment in computer chip manufacturing just coming into being. None of you thought that would happen. None of you thought that would happen. But it's happening. It's happening.
Palavras fortes, palavras sérias, né? Então, o presidente Joe Biden, que não vai desistir da candidatura de mais um mandato, né, presidente da República, da potência mundial que é os Estados Unidos, né, diante da dura veracidade do Partido Democrata, que queria que ele desistisse, né, mas ele vai à frente, pelo que a palavra dele vai adiante, vai persistir e vai enfrentar de igual para igual o ex-presidente Donald Trump.
Your Vice President Kamala Harris would be ready to serve on day one. Can you elaborate on that?
Essa é a primeira parte, né? Vamos à segunda parte.